Hello, everybody. Hello, Rob. I am so excited to be here for another dinner party at Food and Mood Talks. Today, it's going to be such an interesting conversation because I met Rob at an Enneagram training. And we exchanged numbers because we just had so much to talk about with our different Enneatypes and in the group, and just so much came up. And we've been talking for a couple of years now. I just feel he's like a soul brother. And I'm so excited to bring him on board here because every time we have a conversation, for me, it just feels like there has been a mini enlightenment. And Rob is a coach, he's a teacher. And the way that he does that, I feel he's a constant seeker, he always wants to break the rules, to form it his way and to understand how life needs to be understood, but through his perspective, not taking things with a grain of salt and not taking them for granted. He has a rebellious spirit and a really fun approach to life. And I'm just so excited to see where this dinner conversation is going to take us. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a three-part series. And today the series is going to be called Dancing with Desires, because that's something that I feel comes up a lot on our conversations, because desires, I mean, we can link it back spiritually, but we can also link it to food as a desire, right? And food is something that we can't live without. So that's going to be the overarching topic of our conversations. And today we're going to be talking about how our relationship with food is like a dance. And that phrase came from one of my teachers, Mark David, because he says we cannot live without food. We need to learn how to eat in a way that makes us feel good. And it's always going to be a sort of duality, right? Like the middle point is something that we ourselves need to find out. And I just love to link it with like the idea of desires. And you also have like a background in a lot of different spiritual traditions. So let's just see where this goes. What does it mean for you, dancing with desires, or our relationship with food is like a dance?
Totally. Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is, there's these rituals around like when somebody dies. I can't remember where I read this. I think I read it in Trickster Makes This World. This community, the first thing they do is they actually cut out the intestines. They take out the intestines and they burn them because they're passing on from this human life and now getting rid of their desires. And so to make sure that they don't bring any desires and hunger into the spiritual world, they burn their intestines. Because desire is an inherently human thing. It's something that we as human beings have to work with and deal with in this space and in this plane, whether it be food and what we like literally eat, or emotions, or relationships, or whatever it may be, things we want to do. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and when they burn their which tradition is this? Do you know?
I can't remember. I don't know what the book or where it is in the book. I'll have to look. But
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting because for me, what comes up for me is that many times it feels like we many of us have the idea that we need to kind of shut off our desires, but that's the whole point, right? It's like when we try to do that, it's like a desire, it's an attachment of something that we need to get rid of, right? It's like a rejection of life, or it's a rejection of something that is part of this life. Ta-da! He disappeared.
Joker mode. I had to get rid of those
Joker
dogs.
mode.
I couldn't do it.
Now I'm here, now I'm not.
I couldn't do it. Sorry, say what you said again. I had to
Yeah,
get rid of those dogs.
it's like this idea of and I think it's a false understanding of it, because like going back to the idea of having desires and how desires are a bad thing, and we shouldn't have these desires, like also bringing it like the sinning part of it. It's like, for me, that is a desire. Try to get rid of our desires is in itself a desire. It's a rejection of life. And that's why it's something that's really tricky, because with food, for example, like, we can have both polarities. It could be like compulsive eating, overeating, or it could be like restriction, complete like abstinence of food. And then it's like they're both being really rigid in a way of how we're trying to control life and how we're getting away from a desire, and it's like a very interesting thing, because the middle path, it's a dance. It's not a middle path, right? It's not like there's like we have the polar opposites, but then in the middle, that's where we need to find our own way. And this is why it's so tricky, I believe, because that's where our authenticity is. That's where we take responsibility for our actions. But it's very difficult to be there because it's scary. It's a really large spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years really kind of diving into seeking spiritually.
Mhm.
And part of that comes with like trying to live as spirit, I guess, and not have these desires. And right, a lot of the religious talk is control your desires, get rid of them, put them away, but it's like I think that negates our humanity. Like we're
Mhm.
not gods, we're humans. We're God manifesting as a human being. And
Mhm.
so like, yeah, we like I love the yoga, the term like brahmacharya, one of the yamas in yoga.
Mhm.
Like it oftentimes gets translated as celibacy. So like no sex, no desire, right? Cut your desires off. But I've also heard it translated as linked to God. So like aligned. So it's not that you can't have sex or you can't eat the food or you can't have the desires. It's just when you give into the desires, let that be aligned with your
Mhm.
spirit and your character and not not misaligned. But it's not the desire, it's not the food, it's not eating or not eating. It's is that action in alignment with my spirit or not in alignment with that my spirit, and then from that space I make the choice. And ultimately, like that can only come from within, right? Because if a community says, hey, eating steak is a good thing and not eating steak is a bad thing, well, that now puts this external thing on. What if somebody doesn't feel good when they eat steak? What if somebody feels great? If you say, like we I think we have to give space for each of us to be able to explore in our own way what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And really the only way we actually get to that is by giving into our desires. Because if we're always ever, if we're avoiding everything out of this, guise of I'm not gonna give into my desires, well then it often leads to like binging and just like a full takeover when we break down. But also we don't know what we like. We can't experiment. And part of sometimes, like when you first start riding a bike, you're gonna fall and you're gonna skin your knee sometimes. We start playing with these desires and we have sex for the first time, it's like, oh my God, I want this all the time. Wow, that was so amazing. And we eat that ice cream. We eat the ice cream. It's like, oh my God, I want to eat the whole pint. Like, but it's like only through that process, then we can realize, like, I'll give a perfect personal example. I used to really like orange soda. And but I didn't really, it was weird. It was like I wanted to like orange soda. Like I sort of liked it, but I didn't love it. But every time we went out to the store, I would order orange soda because or every time we went to the restaurant, I would order orange soda because it was like, yeah, I want to like orange soda. But after a while of like actually experiencing this thing, my body realized, you know what? I really don't like orange soda. And then I stopped ordering it, but if somebody had just said, hey, you need to drink all of the orange soda, or you can never drink all of the orange, you can never drink orange soda, it would have, you
Right.
know, caused more turmoil, I feel.
Yeah, because it's
So
gonna put on like external expectations, or like, especially you, like I feel like you have a very rebellious soul. You're like, if somebody tells you that, be like, I think I'm gonna like more orange soda just because like I'm being limited from that, because it's
because you
like,
told me not to. Yeah.
exactly, we need to play with life. And the funny thing is that life is so abundant. Everything that we know is in life, right? Like everything, it's like the absolute, like it's just absolutely everything is offered in life, right? So like you were saying about the steak, it's like, for example, when I used to live in China, there was a time when like eating meat was just showing that like, okay, we're out of this of this phase of famine, you know. So whenever they would offer meat, it's because we want to offer you, like, we can finally afford something. So it was a way for them to really show that now they have something that they can offer. So it was really respected and it was really cherished to eat meat. And then afterwards, like, it just became like an overconsumption of meat, right? Like a showing off. And like, that's the thing, right? We need to go through these different dances, because from one end of the spectrum, we are going to go to the other end. And you know, sometimes we need those extremities, but the whole, like, I think the important thing is to realize, like, these are just things offered in life. Like, none of them are inherently bad nor good. And it's just like seeing, I love what you were saying. It's just about being connected with spirit, so we can eat in a way that just feels right at the moment. Because, like, for example, a cheesecake, right? We can have a cheesecake and have just like the most fabulous time eating the cheesecake. It could be the whole slice, it could be part of the slice, whatever, but it's like how we're approaching the cheesecake. But if we're super anxious and we're nervous and we just feel like the world is just crumbling down, and then there's a piece of cheesecake and we need some space from all of this, like, things that we're going through in our life, then that cheesecake becomes something else. It represents something else, but it's still a cheesecake, right? But the way that we eat it, it's like, I'm so confused, I feel so alone, or whatever the narrative is. And then we tend to blame the cheesecake, or like, I can't control myself around the cheesecake. But the thing is that we need to realize that it's not about the things. And also, one thing that I really love, I haven't gone deeply into it, but I love the idea of Tantra, of like becoming one with whatever, like whatever we're eating, or with life. It's just like being so present in the moment that it's not, again, like if we're eating the cheesecake in a tantric way, it's becoming part of that experience. It's not separate from us. But when we think of, that's one thing that I need to control myself of, immediately we see it as an enemy, right? Because it's, I can't control myself. And then we see ourselves as the enemy. But when we're aligned with what we're doing, that is when like, I feel nothing can be evil, nothing can be bad, right? Because we're aligned, we're choosing it, we're owning up to our decisions. And at the same time, that's so difficult to do, because that really requires a lot of like, not just intuition, but being calm. And our emotions are super rocky, you know, it's like a roller coaster. So it's such a subtle thing, right, of getting into that place of being aligned. It's not like, oh, you need to be aligned when you eat. It's like, that is the work, right? That is the dance.
Right. Right. It's just, it's bringing awareness to why I'm eating the cheesecake. You know, like for me, it's smoking, right? It's smoking pot. It's I'm feeling stressed. I need this joint to calm me down. Right. And oftentimes I give into that desire. And oftentimes I judge that desire. I judge myself for giving into it. But what I've been practicing and working on lately is just trying to take a moment when I get that desire, when I get that anxiousness, or that, like, you know, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling okay, and I have this desire to smoke this joint or eat the cheesecake or down the whole pint of ice cream or whatever it may be. Like, I kind of just I try and sit for a second and just say, okay, what am I seeking? What am I hoping that joint will provide for me? What am I hoping that cheesecake will provide for me? What am I hoping that eating that pint of ice cream will provide for me? Could I offer that to myself without whatever the thing is? You know, could I meditate? Could I journal? Could I go for a walk? Could I reflect? Could I, you know? And so I think it's just finding those little moments where, because you're right. Like, we make the thing separate as this, like, oh, I'm going to take that thing and then I'm going to be better. But ultimately, like, the thing is us.
Yeah.
So we don't need it, you know.
We are the cheesecake.
Right. Right,
Totally.
totally right. We have, I mean, like, we have all of the, you know, it's like, okay, so I did a like, you know, talking about my rebellious spirit and and seeking. So about, like, probably, man, it must have been 3 or 4 years now. I was experimenting pretty heavily with psychedelics as a form of like consciousness expansion and trying to achieve enlightenment, or whatever I thought enlightenment looked like at the time. And I put this whole day together. I arranged this day where I was out in the woods, and I was gonna, like, imbibe all of these different psychedelics in one day, and I was gonna find God. I was gonna, like, achieve enlightenment. So I ate mushrooms, I did LSD, I smoked DMT, I smoked weed, like about anything you could think of, I tried it. And it was like probably 11:30 at night, and it was a great day. I felt really good, but I didn't have that moment where I was seeking for, of this just like enlightenment, knowing. And so it was the end of the night, and I said, all right, well, we'll smoke some DMT, and that'll, like, they gotta be right. Like, I've had this whole day, I've been asking for it, I've been waiting for it. Like, this is the moment. So I smoke, and I, get like shot up into the whatever, wherever we go when we're on those things, and I literally, and this is true, all of it, like, heard this voice just like so deep, and not my voice, and like not the voice that's usually in my head. Like, I know my different voices. This was not one of the usual ones that I hear. It was so deep, and it literally just said, "You think you need any of this?" And then I went to sleep.
And then I went to sleep. Okay.
And that was it. It was like because and then I didn't like experiment with psychedelics for like 2.5, 3 years after that. Like, I took a long break, because it literally was just like, I thought that I needed the drug to get to this place of stillness and knowing God, or knowing spirit, or knowing myself. And when I fully, like, went all in on that gambit, on that, like, belief, the message that I got back from God, spirit, universe was, you think you need these things? Like, really?
And well, my perspective is, yeah, you did. You did,
Right.
because that's how you got that voice to tell you that. And then you made your own decision.
Right.
I don't feel like this anymore, right? It's like, for example, Ram Dass. I love Ram Dass, and like in his on his documentary of Becoming Nobody, like, yeah, you try to smoke this, and you turn around, and you go upside down, and then you take this, then it's like trying to find enlightenment. And then he's like, yeah, but it's just about kind of being here now, right? But he only came to that because he had that experience. And that's why I feel like when we try to reject something, we are giving other people or other philosophies the authority over us, when we actually needed that. Maybe we needed to feel completely disgusted with food for a long time. We needed that. The thing is, what I appreciate in your story as well is, like, you realizing, oh, I don't want to do this anymore for 2.5 years. Like, my body, my spirit, it just needs a break, because that was your own intuitive and authentic decision. And that is super important. But like, I feel this is the voice that we need to be listening for, right? It's like, like what also when you were saying, like, oh, I really want that joint, but like, can I give this to myself? The part of me that always needs to go for something external. It's like, of course I can't give it to myself. That's why I need that thing, right? Of course I can't. And at the same time, it's, for me, what has been super healing has been like, you know what? That's true. I don't know what I need right now, because our mind is trying to explain, oh, right now I need love, right? Like they say, like, oh yeah, like food is filling an emotional void. What the fuck does that mean, right? Like, do I need a hug? I don't want a hug. I want a cheesesteak, and I want 20 of them, right? So it's like, wow, like, I'm super dysregulated right now. And one thing that has really helped me is not making it about the cheesecake. Be like, of course, have the cheese, of course, have the cheesecake, and realize that this is a pattern. Realize that as much as you think it's going to save you, it's a pattern, and this is not a one-time thing that you're actually really hungry. So let's do both. Like, let's have a cheesesteak, and at the same time, let's just bring awareness that I'm eating something that I don't physically need, but I'm deciding to do it right now. And by owning up to my own desires, that's how I can start taking full agency of my life.
Right, because and this is where it's like, right, because your body does need it. like in this sense, like the body wants to be comforted by this cheesecake, or like in my case, my body wants to be comforted by the joint. Like our body, I mean, this is why there are all of these groups for addicts and trying to break addictions and habits and stuff, is because it's fucking hard. Like the body has these physiological needs that are dependent on these things, and like the mind can't talk us out of that. It's like, all right, I need this thing, I'm gonna have it. Like I want to. It's and right, that's okay too. And like that's where this dance comes in. Is like our society, I feel like, is so caught up in how we can be like better and more healthy and live a long life, and like you got to do all this diet and nutrition and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's good, and also like enjoy the cheesecake. Go have the thing, go like. And it's all about finding that balance for ourselves, I think. Really is comes back to it, is
You know,
um
I think that it's really about finding our like inner voice, right? Like I wouldn't say it's about finding balance for me personally, because it's like I don't know what that means, because balance is a dance, right? So balance,
Mhm.
and when we tend to want to find balance, it's like I need to find a way of eating that is going to be sustainable for the rest of my life, whether I'm pregnant, whether I'm single, whether I'm married, whatever. It's like these are going to change. They change every moment. Like I wasn't able to sleep last night. I was like super frustrated, and I'm just like, all my mind is thinking of, I want to go have like this moon milk with like blend it with ghee and have a date. And I'm just like, it's 1 a.m. Your cat is sleeping next to you. Just sleep. And I couldn't. And I'm just like, I'm gonna go and have that moon milk and that date. And I go in and have it. And it feels really good, right? But if I were blaming and judging myself for waking up at 1 a.m. and doing this, it's just like, why? It's just like a constant battle, right? So I
Right,
think that
right,
what it's showing is like, for me, it's using these other things to listen better to myself, because when I can hear the narrative around that, if I hear a lot of criticism and shame, I know something else is going on. If I'm enjoying doing it and I'm enjoying like consuming it, then it's just my body needed that, or I just needed something to kind of just like put me to sleep more. So it's
right,
like really interesting to see how I feel compulsions are a gateway into like our own awakening, because then it shows us like what narrative is going on with that. And I even feel like, I don't know why this is coming to me, but I remember when I was younger and I used to love going out and going to lounges, going to bars, and and like I grew up in Lebanon, they always serve you like this bowl of like really amazing mixed nuts, and they were always so good and so crunchy, and they just tasted so amazing. And I noticed how it just became so related to like these night outs. So it was mixed with pleasure, and it was also mixed with awkwardness. When you're sitting in a table with people that are like just not vibing with you, and then you have this, you're like, all right, I'm going to distract myself.
right.
And then also like crunching the nuts can be like a way of like, I hate this person in front of me and I'm destroying them in my mind through this crunching, right? So it's like there's a whole universe of ways that we're relating with the food, that for a long time I was extremely addicted to nuts, right? And they're a health food according to like a lot of different like ways of diets. But it's like for me, they triggered, like as soon as I ate nuts, it literally triggered so many emotions inside of me that I couldn't
Mhm.
stop eating. And then I would blame myself and I would feel so bad. So all of these things that were healthy just turned against me, I would feel. And I had to stop buying them completely. I couldn't have them in my house. And now when I started realizing, like, look, it's not about that. If it's easier for you not to have them, okay. But remember, it's not about the nuts. And now I can have them and I'm totally fine with it. But also because right now I'm just changing the narrative I have around that it's not about the food. It's just like, it's not about the person, right? It's really about how we're relating with that. And that's
Right.
why it's a dance, like with another person. I'm curious to know about what you think about this. Like, if our relationship with food is like a dance, like I believe that because we can't live without food and we can't live without relationships. We could, but
Right.
we'd be miserable. How do you see how relationships are like a dance?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you went there, because I was literally about to say that this reminds me of relationships, and how we really do like you can only do half of the spiritual trip alone in the woods. There's an importance to taking our solitude to get to understand what that voice is, what that inner voice is, who I want to be, like get rid of all the stuff and go inward. But then eventually it's only in relation to other people that we work on our shit. You know, it's like, oh, I can meditate and be in this serene, peaceful, it's all flowing and it's all cool situation. Well, okay, what happens when my cat wakes me up at 1 o'clock in the morning? You know, or I haven't slept much. So I just went to sleep 2 hours ago and now I got a cat running around or a dog running around, or I get like, you know, there's this, it's when we get poked that we really get to learn about ourselves. And so I think all of these things, you know, the food, compulsions, relationships, whatever, they're just poking us, you
Yes,
know?
they're just
And then
poking us.
yeah, and then we get to see how we respond to being poked,
Mm.
you know, and that's going to change over time. It's going to change with more awareness. It's going to, you know, but it's poking us in these spots that need to be, that are for us to work on. You know, I think there's this like Ram Dass talks about life being a curriculum, and us coming here in order to learn something or do something or just unfold amongst this curriculum and to live it. And you know, so I see it being that way, like a song. You know, you can't play the third minute of a song without playing the first minute, and you can't get to the first minute of a song without playing the first note and then the next note and the next note. And if you try and play the note 8 notes ahead, the song is going to sound weird because it's going to jump and it's like, what the fuck, that wasn't how it was supposed to go. And so like it's like this, you know, right, it's this dance, it's this, I can only move with you the way that the music is allowing us to move. You know, if there's a ballroom song on, we're gonna ballroom dance. And if it's like a hip hop song, we might shake our ass a little bit. But it's like if I were to shake my ass to the ballroom dance, or I were to try and ballroom dance to the hip hop, it would be, both would feel a little weird, you know. So I like the I say it to say it right. It's like the song almost creates the container. The compulsion almost creates the container for us to watch our dancing, for
Ah.
us to see, you know, yeah, what our dance looks like, how we respond to it.
And also like even dances, this is how they start. Like we start like for example, I don't know, drum and bass, right? Like dancing to drum and bass is like, it seems completely wild, but it's like that just became another way of, like, the body just knows how to move to specific sounds. And also it's just like about shake your booty a little bit in a ballroom dance, and maybe a new dance is going to come out of that. And if this is what
Right.
you want, okay, great. Like, but I think the whole point here is like, one thing that I love about life is that it feels that this moment always has our backs every single time. Whenever we get so confused and we start like, we just get in this rut of like, I can't believe I did this, I completely missed all the steps, I look like a total idiot dancing this way, my partner just like thinks like is judging me, all of that. When we cling onto that narrative, we're getting out of the dance of life in this moment. When we can kind of be like, yeah, that was a shit show, and right now, like this flow of life, like this wave has my back. If I can just let go of that and see what's coming up, just like in a conversation, you know, it's like, this is why I love talking with you, because there's never any pressure. It just feels like, obviously here, nobody's trying to like, we're not trying to convince ourselves out of anything. We're kind of just like dancing with the conversation. And when we're able to not cling onto a specific way of looking at things, because I know that you'd always call me out if I'm talking shit, you know, or if I'm like fooling myself. It's just like, yeah, just relax and see what's showing up right now. And when we can do that, when we can see how nurturing this moment can be, if we allow it to be, if we don't try to make it be what we need it to be, it always has our backs. And this is why I feel like even like dancing, right? It's just like when you can get back into the rhythm, that is the practice, getting back into the rhythm. It's not about changing the past, because that doesn't matter. Just keep on getting back to the rhythm, and our bodies know how to move to the rhythm. And we also have like, you know, what do they call it, like muscle memory, right? So it's just such an interesting thing, because compulsions tend to be like that, like, oh, I fucked it up in this dance. But when we cling onto that, that becomes another escape from keep on dancing this dance, right? And that is also showing us, maybe I don't want to be here, maybe I'm scared of being here. And
Right.
what I love to bring is just freshness. It's like, yeah, I really don't want to be here, noticing that, and I'm still here, let's keep on moving.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing what you just said made me think of when I was when I was first learning how to play guitar. A friend of mine said to me, and we were jamming together, and I was getting a little lost and whatnot. He said, "Hey, man, don't lose the rhythm trying to catch a note."
Mm.
You know, it's to say it like to like for those who aren't musicians, right? If I'm playing, like, let's say I play a F instead of a C, and I meant to play a C, but I played an F. Well, the next note's a G. Like, let me just go play that G, as opposed to try and catch the C that that I missed. Because if I
Mm.
try and catch the C that I missed, I'm gonna lose the rhythm. The song's moving.
Mm.
So it's like, all right, I missed the C because I played an F, but the next note's a G. So okay, let's just rock, you know? And I think that's the right, like, life moves on. The river moves on. The river is constantly flowing. And so if we, that's not to say we should never reflect or get stuck on. Sometimes we have to look backwards, of course, but it's this general ethos of like, all right, let me move with the rhythm, you know, let me, like, in the moment while the song is playing, while the thing is happening, let me keep going. If after the thing's over, I want to look back and reflect, okay, that's cool. But like while the thing's happening, like let's keep moving with the thing. Um, and I saw a quote yesterday by a musician, Leonard Cohen, who's one of my favorite songwriters, and he said, uh, "If we don't," he said, until we realize that we're the ocean, we're going to experience a lot of seasickness."
Mm. Wow. Oh, yes.
Right. But it's like once we realize we're the ocean, it's like, yeah, okay, man. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down, sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm there, sometimes, but I'm the ocean. So why do I, you know, I don't need to be sick. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm eating the cheesecake, I'm eating the cheesecake. If I'm smoking the joint, I'm smoking the joint. Like, we make ourselves sick when we try and separate from that. And oh, well, I'm eating the cheesecake, but I should be eating an apple. Or you know, like, I should have hit this step, or I should have. It's like, and I think that's something that was a big benefit from me with my use and my experimentation with psychedelics, is like it really eliminates the shoulds. You know, there's like, yeah, like, if I eat like LSD or something, I'll roll around in the dirt and not think anything of it and feel totally just like, wow, you know, where like if I'm not on something like that and someone says, hey, let's go roll around in the dirt, I'm gonna look at them like, oh no, we're not supposed to do that. You know, but when with psychedelics, it just takes away all of the supposed to, so that we can actually like imagine this world where we can do whatever we want. But then, you know, I think the step beyond, and that's why, you know, that message for me of you think you need any of this, like, was really poignant, was like, okay, the step beyond is, yeah, we can do anything we want, but what do you want to do?
Mm.
Like, like, yeah, you could walk any path in this world, but what path do you want to walk? And I think there's this, right, that's the, we're like, we grow up as children being told a certain path to walk, whether that be by our parents or our religious institutions or our teachers or our friends or whomever. We're like very much told like this is the path to walk. And then for me, my process was like, fuck that. I could walk any path I want, and going into this open space of like I can go anywhere. And now now my journey is like, okay, cool. Yes, I can go anywhere, but like what path do I want to walk? and how can I walk that one? Which one feels harmonious to me, you know, and understanding that that's always going to change, that it doesn't have to be, you know, forever, that like, you know, it doesn't have to be get this career and do this for 45 years. It could be, you know, but even in that, there's nuances, there's differences. People come, people go. It's a new owner. It's a new this. It's like, even driving to the, even waking up in the morning, you know, we just, it's so easy to get into our routines of the day that we kind of just get on autopilot, and just like reminding ourselves, hey, this is a new moment. This is a new conversation between the two of us. Yeah, we've had all of these conversations in the past, and of course those are going to influence this one, but like this one is original. This one's new. This one's fresh. And each breath is fresh. Like that's where, like, coming back to the breath is so important, is like, when we really remember, like we inhale and exhale from the moment that we are born to the moment that we die. And yet every single one of those breaths is unique. Like every inhale is a new bit of oxygen that's like, I've never inhaled before. And every exhale is a bit of carbon dioxide that I've never exhaled before. Like a river, you know, it's the same thing, but it's flowing. And, you know, yeah, just not getting caught in the, like, in the little moments. And like I used to be so bad at journaling. I used to hate journaling or writing anything down, because I would, my thought was always like, what if I write this down and it changes? You know, what if I write this and I share this thing either with myself or with somebody else, and then 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, I have a different opinion, you know? And it's like, it's okay, you know, like it's okay to believe, like, yeah, I guess believing what it is, right? This is what it is right now. And I can't, and that I need to address that and share that and put it as it is. And then also in the future, if it's different, it can be different. And that's okay. You know, like,
And that's
well,
I think one of the hardest things, honestly, because like now that you say that, for me, it's very much in how I eat, right? It's like with my journaling, I'm always writing. I have a ton. Like if you can see those, look up there.
mm,
These are all like from the past, like maybe 1 year. I have like 20 journals. But anyway, the point is that like for me, I can write a lot because I know that it's staying with me, and I'm not going to share this. But when it comes to like food, for example, one of the reasons why I like, one of my narratives, my food story was that like, if I'm eating like this today, that means that Sarah, you're going to own up and you're going to eat like this for the rest of your life.
forever. Right.
Every Tuesday. Right. If you're saying it's Taco Tuesday today, every single Tuesday for the rest of your life is going to be Taco Tuesday. And if you decide in 20 years to stop eating meat, well, then maybe now you shouldn't eat meat, right? So it was like this constant needing to control everything, because I needed everything to be packaged so perfectly in the way that I eat. And that obviously was just completely against like being in the flow of life. And Bruce says, if you're trying to follow somebody, if you're trying to follow a path, that's not your path because it's already built, or something like that. Bruce Lee is one of my favorite like mentors ever, because it's really about when we think that we need to follow this path. Because like, for example, when you were talking, I was just thinking like, of course we want to follow somebody else's path, because like, for example, Disney World, they make every path so beautiful and so attractive. Why would you want to go into like the gutters, right? Like into like this place that looks scary, and like that is building our own path, where we need to go into the dark places where nothing has been built. And obviously our like survival mechanism doesn't want to go there, because why, like, it just feels really weird like to build our own thing when all of this beauty is already presented for us. But at the same time, then it can feel like, you know, fake, because everything that's already been created, it's been created with somebody else's dream and somebody else's vision, so we can learn from that. So I believe it's just about really going there and exploring, and never blaming society for like the way that we think, because that's bullshit, right? Like we're always going to be acting on what makes us feel like safer. And when we blame society, we are completely like losing agency over the control and the power and the responsibility that we have to ourselves of exploring this life. So I just
Right.
feel like really building our own path. And for me, it connects really beautifully with like diets, right? Like all diets are amazing. They all helped someone. That's why they spent years studying that diet. So it's not about like being anti-diet and don't ever diet. That's just somebody else's path. Just do you want it to be yours or not? That's the only decision that we need to take. That's it. Not blaming anybody else, just seeing how is this feeling for me. And it's gonna be a constant, like you said, when we're trying to catch the note, we're missing the rhythm. When we're trying to get somebody else's way of eating or like a consistent way of eating that is never gonna change, we're missing the rhythm. But the whole point is that that's poking us to get back in the rhythm. That's it. There's
Right.
and the emotions I feel are what make us want to cling on to something, because we feel so unsafe and so insecure with how to deal with these emotions, because these emotions were linked to like a life or death situation, like whether like physical or mental, right? So of course it makes sense. And I feel like just this is the practice, this is the dance.
Right. Right. Well, and I think there's a, you know, we need to start playing an infinite game. And what I mean when I say that is like the goal of the game shouldn't be to win. The goal of the game should be to keep playing. Right? Like it's not to win diet. It's to continue to eat in alignment with your what's right for you. And so that's inherently going to change as time goes on. But I'm continuing to play the game, you know, like because it's just the mind, the ego wants to control. It wants to know. It wants to win so that it can say, okay, I've figured out how to eat now. I'm done. I've solved that problem. I've put away that thing that could harm me. No longer do I have to worry about it. But everything changes. Everything. Well, you know, what if I decide I'm going to eat this? I've figured out this diet plan that's all mangoes, and now there's a mango shortage. What do we, you know, like, and I think it's just sitting in that, and that's where like a lot of the spiritual work really has helped me, is that it's, I understand, and I think anybody who looks like honestly at their life would come to the same conclusion. It's like life is uncertain. Period. There is no way to control for everything that is going to happen to our self, like our ego, our body, our you know, existence. And life on a cosmic scale is very certain. It has a path, it has a rhythm, it's going to flow in a certain way. And so it's like, you know, I think there's this, I guess, kind of like false belief that the right way to gain control over life is to control the little things that I need, these ego things. But in a sense, actually, the best way to gain control is to surrender the little self into the big river, and then learn how to dance with it, learn how to move with it. You know, and one thing you were saying earlier about like copying and this and that I thought about is like everything that we copy was once an original. You know, like everything that's copied is what was once an original. And so that thing that's not to say we shouldn't take others. Like if I'm going on a journey, right? If I'm going to climb a mountain, let's say I want to go hike Mount Everest. Well, if I just go walk to the base of Mount Everest and start climbing, that's probably pretty foolish. I don't know what gear I'm going to need. I don't know where to go. I can do it. Totally, I could do it, you know, but it's a little foolish. But so it's helpful to sit there and say, okay, hey, you climbed Mount Everest before. What did you do? What path did you go? Do you have any maps you could share with me? What tools did you have? What gear did you need? This, that, and the other thing. It's helpful. But eventually, I've got to buy my shit. get my pack, and set off on the mountain and figure it out. And where they went left, maybe now I want to go right, or where they, kept going straight, it doesn't feel right. It's like, eventually I have to go and prove it for myself. And I think that's like, to me, that's the happy medium dance, is like, let me hear this idea and then let me practice it and play with it and actually see how this feels in my body. And I think that's where we really get stuck in our society at the moment with social media and like all of this information all of the time. Like, is that we just like, for myself, it's, oh, this is a good idea. I try it for a couple, like I play with it for a couple days, and then there's a new book or a new idea. It's, oh, this is a good idea. And I think about it, and it's like, we need to actually sit and integrate these things for a minute to then say, okay, yeah, this is a good path for me, or this isn't a good path for me. Or, like we need to take the theory and make it practical. So that's actually where like my business name and kind of like life philosophy of play, explore, and love, that's actually where that came from. So I had started doing all of these, like I'd started reading all these like self-help books and kind of diving a little more into Buddhism and Christianity and different spiritualities and spiritual practices. And then I just sat there, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, like these are all good, but it's all like what somebody else is telling me God is, what the Buddha is telling me God is, or Jesus, or the people who wrote the Bible, or this or that, or the pastor, It's all their opinion. And I want to figure this out for myself. Like, I want to know for me what the truth is. And all of these roadmaps are great places to start, but like, I've got to go walk the path myself. And so I sat down on a bench one day and I started thinking, I was like, okay, so like, if I were God, like if this theory were really true, like I have no idea if it is or isn't, but if this theory were really true, like if I were really spirit living in this body, what would I do every day? Like what would I go and do? And the three things that I came up with were, I would play enthusiastically, like fully present in this moment, fully engaged in this thing, because clearly I'm God in a human body. I did that for a reason. Let me engage in it. I would explore courageously, because what is there to be afraid of? Everything else is me. So, cool. And then I would love, because again, everything else is me, and all of the spiritual texts that I've read all point back to love in one way or another. And that doesn't mean, and the type of love that's also telling the truth too, not just the type of love that's like coddling or making allowances for, but the kind of love that's like also willing to tell you when you're fucking up. And I would do those three things. And so that became my practice, was that I just, I'm going to do these things. And when I would, yeah.
And that comes with a lot, that comes with a lot of like self-responsibility. And I believe the reason why us as an ego, like, want to follow a path is because that's where we can also be like, I followed this path because of you and I didn't like it, and now I don't know what my life is about. So it's like, there is a convenience in following paths. And that's why I believe that whenever we start judging like the situation or others, that's just like, because we don't know who we are. Obviously, I don't even know what that means. Who are we? And I feel like it's just constantly going back to that inner compass. Like, what makes me feel good? What makes me feel aligned with whatever I'm choosing right now? Maybe I did smoke that joint and it didn't make me feel good. So that's just information. That's purely information, and it's just like our bodies are telling us in this moment that didn't make me feel good. Does that mean that smoking is bad for me? Absolutely not. That's not the point. The point is that it's about being receptive to like what's going on and just really opening up, getting back to the rhythm. I love that. And I feel like that is, I think, the practice that we can do with every single thing in life. And that's why it's so beautiful, because our compulsions show us this. Like, a compulsion for me that was so big also is like in a conversation of like always having an agenda, right? Like where this needs to go. And it's so scary because that is a big way of trying to control things. And when somebody else thinks differently, then I'd be like, this is not going right. But it's just based off of an idea of an agenda that I had, but it's completely missing the rhythm of the conversation. But what is amazing, I remember once I was in class, and there was this guy that my ego tends to like judging a lot. You know, I'm just like always finding criticism in things, and it's like, I don't think that makes sense, or I think you're lying, and like just completely like criticizing internally. And then I catch myself doing that, and I find it a bit funny sometimes. And then there was this guy talking, and I'm just like, he really annoys me. Like, I'm just like, I just want him to stop talking because he's just like saying a lot of BS. And then I'm just like, Sarah, like in my own terms at that point, I'm just like, get back into the rhythm of life, like see what he's trying to teach you.
Right.
And then he said something that I'm just like, what? He said, I don't know, to like complete his point, he's like, I just like look into the eyes and say, just like me. So he was saying that whenever we feel so separate from someone, he just reminds himself that there are eyes in front of me, and whatever that person is sharing, just like me, like we are one, right? Like whatever that person is sharing, I experience that as well. So whatever I'm judging, it's because I'm judging that in myself as well.
Right.
I'm like, bro, like he was just my guru in this moment. Like literally when I surrendered to that, when I started actually listening without an agenda, it's like this guy, I wrote down that phrase and it completely like enriched me, you know? So it's so amazing to see how our compulsions, when we are able to let go of them and realize that, you know, as much as we feel like we need to hold on, when we let go, life has us, this moment has us, maybe not in the way that we want it to have us, but it has us, like you said, in like the eternal sense of it, right? Just letting go of that fear.
Right. Well, right, because the moment that we surrender this idea of the other, we open up to the reality of oneness. You know, that is like we're only set like this, like it's illusion, our separateness, and it's real, and it's real, right? I like I touch this screen, like that's a screen. I'm physically touching it. There is this reality of like of particles, you know. But there's also like if we took all of these, you know, into like quantum physics and whatnot, and we go to like a quantum level, all of these particles are waves, and they can actually interchange on a molecular level. And there might not, like if this is my right hand, this is my left hand, I go like this. Well, now there might be some particles from my right hand that are now in my left hand, and vice versa. So it's like, you know, are they really separate? You know, like if I take my right hand and my left hand, they look separate, but I can draw a line where they connect, you know, like yin and yang, they look separate, but that line that's there connects them. So like if I'm standing on the line, are they, you know, are we really different? Are they actually two separate things? And so really ultimately it just comes down to where we choose to draw the boundary, you know, and the more comfortable we can get with like expanding that boundary outside of ourselves, the more we can realize, oh wow, like this is all part of it. This is all ocean. This is all like that person who's talking is, you know, communicating a message with me. It's God speaking to me, you know, and that doesn't mean that I need to like bow down and kiss that person's feet and like worship them forever as this great teacher. But it's like in that moment in my heart, I can do that, you know, like I can have that internal appreciation for all of these other teachers, even if the only way in which they're teaching me is to poke my buttons so that I realize something about myself. You know, it might not even be something they say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I remember this part of like Ram Dass, you know, like he was struggling with the microphone and in his documentary, and he's like, just like he's trying to be all this like guru, you know, like there's a huge stage in front of him, and then the microphone is just like flop and falling and breaking, and he's just like trying to keep it together, and he's like, he just laughs, you know, he's like, at that moment the microphone was my guru, you know, it just like lessons and it kind of sweeps us away with lifeness, right? And it's just like I feel like the only thing is what would feel right for me is like just not getting attached to like how I think I need things to be, and to just kind of just welcome things as they are. And oh my God, like this has been such a nourishing conversation. I love this because
so
You can get so much nourishment from this.
Yeah. So I'm going to read this to you, but I have this right next to my desk, and it's a quote from Ram Dass that is like perfect for what we're talking about right now.
All right, wait,
And he's,
let's make this the dessert because I think we need to wrap up, but this is going to be the perfect dessert for this conversation.
all right. When you stand back far enough, all of your life experiences, independent of what they are all learning experiences. From a human point of view, you do your best to optimize pleasure, happiness, all the nice things in life. From your soul's point of view, you take what comes down the pike. So from the soul's perspective, you work to get what you want. And then if you don't, so I'll work with what I've got.
Bravo, Ram Dass. Oh my God, work with what I've got. That is the key to life, I feel. Present, right? Getting back in the rhythm.
Right.
So yeah, I love this, like the overarching topic of dancing with desires and how our relationship with food is like a dance. And then just using our relationship with food as a way of finding our own inner compass, right? So coming back to ourselves and our intuition. So it's such an amazing lesson, and this is what we've got. So let's work with what we've got, and I'm so excited for the next course. We'll keep it a secret. And thank you so much for this conversation. It was so delicious, and I'm really looking forward for the next time.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It was a pleasure.
Amazing.